You're listening to a Soul One podcast.
Well, this is really an interesting week because we're kind of in a weird in-between week. Because next week's when everything happens.
This is the dead time. Well,
Yeah, what do people
maybe
do
not
during
for you,
this week?
Mike, because
Yeah.
you're very busy, but my job is very slow right now.
Hmm.
And then we close the office. Our last day in office is Friday, but I took it off. So our office is officially closed the 23rd to January 1st. So
Yeah.
it really does feel like a dead time. Like it's senioritis. You're just waiting for the office to close. Yeah. So, but
Yeah,
your work
it's
never
busy.
ends.
Yeah, I it's busy, but a lot of people won't be doing anything next week, and even the week after will be kind of hit and miss. Like it just won't be as busy for the next 2 weeks. So this is the week that everyone's just trying to wrap things up beforehand. But I don't know. The world to me feels kind of checked out. So I don't.
It is It is the only time of year I find that even if you are not like we're a secular culture now, so like most people aren't doing Christmas stuff for religious reasons, but I feel like across the board this is the only time, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but this is the only time in Ontario where it feels like collectively everyone is just checked out for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're celebrating the holidays religiously or you're just using it an opportunity as a holiday. And I to be fair, I know people in the service industry, they often don't get time off at the holidays. I worked in a mall through my undergrad. My heart goes out to mall workers. But for non-service industry people,
Yeah.
the world kind of just checks out. And I hope
Yeah.
that the service industry people that you take some time off if you're able to.
Yeah. Hopefully
Block it off.
everyone
Although,
takes them off.
Mike, did you ever work you've always been artsy and made your own job, so maybe you didn't have to be a slave to the man. But
I worked at the Tim Hortons during my undergrad.
okay, so did you like working the holidays because you get time and a half?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially because I was lucky enough that it was such a flexible, great job, and it was right on campus that it was really good and easy to work around, like a theater schedule and a rehearsal schedule in school. So and whenever school was out, December, the spring break and in the summer, I'd be working there all the time, and that's when you make your money. Is
And
that
it
kind
wouldn't
of
have
time.
been because the campus was more or less shut down. It was probably like the least stressful Tim Hortons to work at.
Yeah. I would say that even in December and the summer, we would get a pretty constant stream of the professors, or we were
Sure.
in one of the science buildings, so there's like labs and stuff. So it's not like it was dead. There was always work to do, but you're definitely right. It was not as high pressure as some places. During the school year, it could be, but I always worked kind of the close evening shift, so you get kind of one rush around dinner time, but then everyone's off to their evening classes or done for the day, and then it would get quite slow. So yeah, it
Right.
was pretty good. I was lucky in that sense because it wasn't like I was working at Starbucks, which I know can be
Whew.
wild. But I was also on the sandwich bar. I'm making sandwiches. Everyone likes the sandwich guy.
You're working hard. I was just thinking this is gonna be so Kingston specific, but the Starbucks. Oh, and I forgot the street. It's near the cathedral. It's across the street from the metro. Am I remembering this
Yes.
correctly? That area, maybe not across from the
Yeah.
metro, but like
It's like
that
Division and
block.
Johnson Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Mm.
that one would probably be a nightmare because there would be no downtime because even when the students are gone, because
Yeah.
it's such a central located yeah, anyways. Well, that wasn't your job and we no longer work in the service industry, so we've paid our dues. And now we can talk about movies on a podcast.
Yeah. and we've got some fun movies maybe to talk about this week.
Yeah,
I'm
speaking of being a slave to the man, my movie The Apprentice.
well, you changed course
Yes,
midweek
sorry.
and changed to reviewing The Apprentice. So we'll talk about that. That kind of goes along with some of our recent political discussions. So you got your review of the Apprentice coming up, and I reviewed Carry On, which stars Taron Egerton from Kingsman, and
And
he
Elton
was
John,
Elton John. Yes, he played
the
Elton John.
Rocket Man.
So he's back doing a American accent.
Hmm.
Doesn't suit his voice whatsoever.
Yeah.
So that was really funny. And then I'm gonna give my final, like my actual official review for Subservience, because I mentioned it last week, but I never gave my official review for it.
That's
I'm gonna
true.
do that as well.
I have this is a very quick aside. I saw that you were reviewing, it's called Carry On, and I thought,
That's right.
oh, Taron Egerton going for a direct to Netflix movie. But then I thought, Taylor, don't be a hypocrite. The amount of actors who have done Netflix movies now, it's just normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a downgrade,
And
I
you know
guess.
who else is in this? Jason Bateman is also in this.
Okay, there you
It
go. So an
actually has a
action.
pretty good cast. Like there's these two other
Wait,
guys
Jason
who I don't.
Bateman as in the comedian? Who I'm mixing him up with the bald action star and
That's Jason Statham.
okay.
Yeah, Jason Bateman, the comedian,
Yes.
comedic actor. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
but was
Yes.
in
Okay.
Ozark. Was his
Yes. Yeah.
like
And Arrested
Darker
Development.
show? Yeah, yes, Arrested Development. Yeah, and then there's these two other guys, like real character actors that you would definitely recognize. I don't know their names, but you would definitely be like, oh, that guy.
Yeah. Very
Um,
recognizable.
so yeah, there's people in it. But I think a lot of people. I think you're right though. A lot of people now do direct to streaming, and they get a lot of money for it. Like that's
Yeah.
Netflix.
Like Nicole
Around.
Kidman has been in a
Mm-hmm.
couple.
Yep.
And she's an Oscar winner, I think. I think I just sometimes with you know what it is, Mike, and you can get into it with your review, but I find Netflix direct to Netflix movies or Netflix originals as they probably prefer to be called, they are so hit or miss.
Yeah.
Like they're either really really good or it's like this feels like a direct to DVD. Yet they're
Yeah.
starring
Yeah.
Oscar winners.
I think they've earned that reputation of being very hit and miss, regardless of who's in it. And I think for what they were doing with this movie specifically, Carry On is a specific type of movie. Like it's another Die Hard sort of idea.
Right.
It's like something else is going on, but it happens to be at Christmas, so there's kind of this Christmas overtone to it. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things. So we'll get to that. Before we do, we have a fan email or follow up to the Roman Empire discussion to do. So we'll dive into that now. This email comes from Kathy.
Can
Says,
I
"Hi,
write
Mike."
out who? Can I write out who Kathy is, or are we gonna
No,
keep her anonymous?
no, we'll continue the anonymous streak. Everyone who writes in is anonymous. Hi, Mike and
No
Taylor.
one gets special treatment on this
Absolutely
show.
not. No, no. That is so funny that you mentioned the Roman Empire, as my friend mentioned this to me about how men think of it. When I told her that I think about it all the time, she stopped laughing, and then I explained. The reason that I think about it so much is I'm impressed with their plumbing and how advanced it was for the period of that time. While others were using outhouses and large buckets to bathe, the Romans actually had baths and indoor plumbing. My kind of place.
Kathy's a woman after my own heart. I'm always thinking about toilets. So indoor plumbing. What's the toilet situation? What's the water pressure like in the shower? You know, those are the things that are top of my list. So Kathy, I hear ya. And it was the aqueducts. Bring babe.
Yep.
That was impressive. So there you go.
Yep.
The Roman Empire.
The empire was impressive while it had lasted. It started a lot of things that we still probably use today in different ways.
I think they invented roads or concrete.
Something like that, yeah. I think they were the first to use concrete. And even like aqueducts and indoor plumbing and stuff, that was all kind of them and everything kind of based off of what they started. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, it's no one's saying the Roman Empire isn't impressive. I just I don't I still just don't get I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't know.
So
Maybe I just
What Kathy's saying is she wants a movie about the invention of
the plumbing.
um the plumbing in Rome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they've never really touched upon that. There was a part of the thing that my work does is every once in a while we go on these sort of group outings in Ottawa to sort of explore and bond. And we went
I would
to
hate that.
yeah, well, sometimes it is what it is. We we went to the Science and Technology Museum in
Oh
Ottawa,
yeah.
and they had a special exhibit all about plumbing, and the Roman plumbing had its own sort of section in it where it was explaining how it worked and stuff. So
There you go.
yeah, it
Kathy's
was
got to
interesting.
go.
Yeah, it was an interesting kind of exhibit. It made me feel sick to my stomach, to be
Are
honest.
you don't like potty humor or like body stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and then as a group, we decided to go and I don't know if you've been to the Wacky Kitchen.
No, I've never been to the
Okay,
Ottawa
well, there's this
technology
kitchen
science.
that's like not tipped, but it's an illusion. And it feels like you're slanted, and you walk
Mm.
through it. So we went through the the bathroom exhibit, and then immediately into this thing, and it just made me feel sick. I think it was too much of everything. Where I'm just kind of like, okay, I.
I'll meet you in the cafeteria,
Yeah,
everyone.
like maybe not even the cap. Maybe I'll just leave. Like I'm done. Because some of those things we do, some of the events, very a lot of fun. But then there's
Sure.
other times where I'm just like, I
Who picked this
just
one?
want to go home. Yeah, why are we doing this? Yeah, yeah,
Are they
yeah.
during office hours or after
Yeah,
office
yeah, they
hours?
are. Yeah,
Okay, so that's
they're in lieu of working on every other Friday. We do like some kind of
oh
thing.
well, that's much better. I thought it's like mandatory bonding after work.
No, no, it's
I
like
would
it's
die.
instead of working, we meet somewhere at 2 o'clock, and from 2 to 3:30 or 4, whatever you're doing this thing, and you still generally end early, so
Cool.
it's all good. But yeah, sometimes I'm just like 1 week it's we're gonna go play pool, and the next week is we're gonna go bouldering, and it's just
Yeah, I can imagine that because they have to appeal to everyone. There are going to be
everybody.
some weeks where they don't appeal to you.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for that fan email, and thank you for bringing up the Roman Empire again. I'm glad we talked about that. We didn't burn any bridges talking about that last week. Any other news before we move on, or are we just
Oh,
gonna?
I sent you that headline and I've already forgotten the name of the
Oh,
actor, but this is the news that no
that's
one cares
right.
about except for me. The casting for American Psycho has
Yes,
been
I have it
announced
right
for
here.
Patrick Bateman.
Austin Butler has
Yes.
been cast as Patrick Bateman in the remake. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I I okay, so this is one of those movies where to me the portrayal is so iconic, Christian Bale being Patrick Bateman. It's to me the character is synonymous with Christian Bale. And Austin Butler doesn't look like Christian Bale. And I know the whole point of remakes or reboots, like you're not supposed to, it's not like they're looking for a young Christian Bale, especially if they're trying to take a new um like a new approach to the book or whatever. But I guess I just can't get out of my mind like the bone structure and like the coloring of Christian Bale. So Austin Butler kind of threw me through a loop. I think he's a great actor and he might have even been on my short list when we originally talked about this and we were just like shooting around names. I might have even put him on the list, but the picture they put a on the article I saw and the one I sent to you, Mike, it's a picture of Austin Butler. He has like a little bit of facial hair and then he has like dirty blonde, kind of like short mussed up hair. And then directly beside that, they put Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman. So stylized 1980s yuppie, like dark, slicked back, like longer hair. So like already it wasn't fair reporting, because to juxtapose a radically, you know what I mean? Like, obviously
Yeah,
they're gonna stylize Austin Butler to look like a 1980s yuppie, right? So
sure.
until I see him in the costume and the hairstyling, it's just hard with the image that they put beside
Yeah,
the
he
original
he
character. Does that
obviously
make
doesn't.
sense?
Yeah, he obviously doesn't currently dress like that.
No.
Um,
And so it's hard for me to picture, like, he'll be clean shaven. They'll probably dye his hair, I assume. Um, One person on the comment was like, he's too babyish, or like he's not angular enough. Like, he doesn't look like a serial killer, whatever, whatever a serial killer looks like. And then another person was like, that's the whole point. Patrick Bateman is supposed to be so banal that you wouldn't think he was a serial killer. So I'm like, okay, like, I see both sides to
hmm.
it. I just wonder, like, I almost wonder if that Jacob Elodie, whatever, how do you say his last name, from Saltburn and your
Oh,
show?
yeah, not my. Let's be clear. Euphoria is not my show. I just
um,
watched it.
like, to me, he has similar coloring to Christian Bale. So, like, to me, that's like the logical step.
Yeah,
You
like
know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
like you're saying, makeup and hair and stuff can make that all the difference there. Like you could
I
see
think he
a
has the
transformation
skill.
physically. Yeah, that because to me the question when casting is this person the right actor for the job? Can they get it done? And acting is a combination of a million things, but all things equal, just acting talent, can he do it or not? And then it's up to the production to then make a character look and feel like something. Like you have to have a great costuming team, a hair and makeup team. Like those are all part of it. So the question is, yeah, can he do it or not?
Because
Um,
have you ever heard, like, do you ever hear, like, um, oh, that person has a face, like, they said this about, oh, what's her name from 50 Shades of Grey? When she was in that Jane Austen adaptation, she was, like, in and out.
Dakota
Dakota
Johnson.
Johnson. And they're like, Dakota Johnson has a face that looks like she could never exist before the cell phone. You know what I mean? Like, she just looks modern.
Okay.
I'm butchering the critique, but essentially they were saying, like, she looks too much like a millennial in,
Right.
like, 2022 or whatever the movie came out. And, like, so I guess that's what I talk when I'm why I'm kind of like hung up on, like, looks, I guess you could say, because again, like, I've read the book. I In my mind now, Patrick Bateman is Christian Bale, so, like, to
Yeah.
me, like, he embodies the character look wise, whatever. So it's like, does Austin Butler look like he could exist in the 80s? I guess that's the question. But he was in that biker movie, and and that was took place in the 60s.
Right.
So, and he did a pretty good job on that. So I don't know. I'm gonna reserve judgment. I think I like Austin Butler. Um, but because I'm pretty attached to the IP, like, I'm interested to see
Yeah.
where this goes. Oh,
Yeah.
and
And
sorry, go ahead.
well, your comment on the other guy, Jacob, whatever his last name is, I know exactly who you're talking about. He also played Elvis as well
Yeah,
in that. So I finally watched Priscilla just because I was curious. Um, I was kind of meh on the movie, to be honest.
I
I
think I
didn't.
was met on the movie too.
Yeah, like I didn't think his performance was anything to write home about in that. I have not seen Saltburn, seeing him in Euphoria, like he was pretty good. But in Priscilla, it's just sort of like okay, like
But
I
I
guess
guess it's the movie was like Priscilla's vehicle,
right,
right?
right.
So
Still, you have to be passable in it. But again,
sure.
apparently he's very good in Saltburn. Like him and Barry Keoghan and some other person are all very good in Saltburn. So maybe that is kind of
If I
the
had to
movie that sprung him.
if I had to pick between the two, I think Austin Butler's more promising.
Right. Yeah, I've seen more of him and more sort of diversity in the roles that he
Chameleon.
takes. Yeah, like he was in Dune. He did that bikers movie. He played Elvis. Like he's at least he was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as well. I keep forgetting that was kind of his first big role.
And he's
Um,
like I think he's a Nickelodeon or Disney kid. He's been acting for forever.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I think he's a little bit like I was aging out as he came on. I think he might have had like a cameo on Hannah Montana, but like
Mhm.
he's like a Disney kid.
I
So
always
he's
forget that
probably a
certain
great
people
professional.
were like Zendaya was also a
Yep.
Disney kid. I always forget about that.
Ariana Grande was
Again,
Nickelodeon.
all I think after my time, because
Yep.
the people that I remember from Disney and kind of the beginning of that were all also
Raven
becoming
Simone.
stars. Yeah, Raven Simone. We're all doing other things also. So I there's kind of a long career of them doing both. Yeah, like Raven, Hilary Duff were kind of the two that were kind of big.
Amanda Bynes.
Oh yeah, Amanda Bynes as well. Yeah, kind of the OG Disney kids.
Yep.
Um, yeah, well, there you go. So that's the casting news.
I'll be interested to see what the rest of the cast shakes up because Reese Witherspoon played the love interest, quote unquote, Patrick Bateman's fiance. It was kind of like a who's who of the like 1998, 1999.
Right.
So Jared Leto was in the original. It'll be interesting to see how they round
Mm.
out the rest of the cast there.
Let's review some movies.
Cool.
So before we get to The Apprentice, I'll just quickly wrap up my subservience conversation from last week and officially review this movie. I'll just come out and say it. It's a skip it. I thought for a promising concept, it just, and I think I brought this up last week. I just think it didn't know what kind of movie it wanted to be, and it reminded me so much of movies like Megan and Bicentennial Man and I, Robot, except the sort of
Ex
obvious.
Machina. I always say
Yeah,
that wrong.
I would say Ex Machina is probably the closest because there's sort of this inherent like sexuality to the movie.
Sure.
Um, and the movie isn't really like about that, but of course they have those moments.
You know what it is, Mike? I think things like AI, maybe sci-fi in general, but particularly like robot movies, AI, and I'm gonna get in trouble because I think there's a difference between an android and a robot
That
and
there
something
is, yeah,
else,
yeah,
whatever. But that genre of movie, I think it's really easy to get cheesy. I think it's a fine line, I
yes,
guess is what I'm
yes.
trying to
And
say.
I think this movie did not do a good job of staying on task because one of the interesting things about this movie is it kind of takes two turns. Both you could kind of see coming, but it was interesting that they decided to go both routes. And then at the end, it gets pretty like, the way sci-fi is. It gets self-referential and it gets a little in its own head, which is good. Like it starts asking interesting questions. Like it gets kind of interesting closer to the end. But the beginning of the movie, it's just like it took 40 minutes to kind of get to the thing we all knew was going to happen. And it just, I think, just missed the mark, which is a shame because I think what it was trying to say and trying to do is topical. I think it makes sense. And I actually do think Megan Fox, her performance was pretty good. Like she played this robot very, very well. It's just we're in an age where this kind of movie is being outpaced by others of its ilk, and it didn't bring really anything new to the table, and kind of fell into the same tropes and became very predictable. So yeah, I don't think it's worth watching or anything. I think the ending is way more interesting than the rest of the movie. But yeah, it's a skip it for me. Um, Taylor, let's get to The Apprentice.
Yes. So originally I told Mike I was going to watch Woman of the Hour because it's now available to rent on Amazon and I assume wherever else people get their VOD. I just happen to rent mostly through Amazon these days. And it is, Mike, coming to Canadian Netflix, I think like December 31st, December
Oh, we're
30th.
finally getting it.
Yes, we're finally getting it. So I thought this was kind of we've been talking about this movie for a while, and I thought, well, not a lot of new stuff's out right now. Maybe I'll watch that. So I kind of dialed into that. And then I saw that The Apprentice was available to rent on Amazon. And this is an interesting movie, Mike. I don't know if you've heard a lot about it.
Not a lot, a little bit, but not a lot.
I think like the sense I got from the promotion tour, or like the little promotion I saw, was like the they're gonna get in trouble by like releasing this movie, or like, you know what I mean, like there's been pushback because this movie's about Trump. But
Right.
whether or not that was like PR spin, or they like truly were like facing obstacles to get this movie made, and whether or not it's going to be detrimental to the actors' careers, I don't know. I don't live in America. I don't live and breathe that political climate. But the very little around the promotional tour I heard made it sound like kind of like, ooh, like these actors, it's going to be hard for them to get work because like they were so, authentic or whatever, whatever. So, I opted to watch this one, A, because I thought it was going to be more interesting than One of the Hour, and B, it is getting a little bit of Oscar buzz around acting.
Mhm.
And so I thought, well, I might as well watch it. And like I said, I thought this was going to make for a better movie experience. And Mike, drum roll, I was correct. This is probably the best movie I've watched all year so far.
Wow. Okay.
So this movie, and now I always feel that I have to like backpedal that after I've announced that, because then it's like at the end of the year and when we do our recap, and I'm like, really, that's the movie I said I liked best. But based on what I've seen so far this year, this is probably my favorite movie of 2024. So the movie takes place in the 70s and 80s, and it's about the rise of Trump, essentially how he was working at his father's company and how he becomes sort of a real estate mogul. And it's primarily about the relationship he has with his attorney, Roy Cohn.
Right.
And I did not know about this Roy Cohn, but he's as interesting as Donald Trump is interesting. And so the movie is sort of about how Roy mentors him, and essentially how Trump becomes the man he is today because of Roy. So, but of course, the movie takes place in the 70s and 80s. But knowing what we know now with his presidential his presidency and his second presidency, you can see the roots of that in this movie. I'm not a historian of Donald Trump, so I don't know how accurate their dynamics were portrayed in this movie, and I don't know if there was a lot of artistic liberty. But I will just say, like, that's kind of my disclaimer, because often when people watch biographical movies, people get bogged down in the details. I shouldn't say often,
Mhm.
but I do experience that, Mike, where people it's like the guy with the Napoleon and his
Yes.
girlfriend being like, that wasn't right. I don't really care that much when I'm watching a biographical movie, because I know it's a movie. You know what I mean? Like, I know
Right.
this isn't a documentary, but that's my caveat, being like, I don't know enough about like not being alive in the 70s and 80s and like growing up with Donald Trump. I don't know how accurate the movie actually is, but you certainly see the man we know today. This movie sort of is explaining how he becomes the man he is. Does that make
Right.
sense? So
Yeah.
that's the
That's yeah.
that's the trajectory of the movie. So the Sebastian Stan plays Donald Trump. I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he was really great. You definitely see sort of his trajectory, and because it takes place over 2 decades, you get to see Donald Trump get older, and I think Sebastian Stan did a pretty good job of showing that trajectory. Jeremy Strong, I think is most known from Succession, the TV show. I
Mhm.
actually have never seen him in anything. So
Oh.
I didn't watch Succession. I don't know the rest of his career. He played the lawyer Roy Cohn. I thought he stole the show. Like, to me, like, nominate this man for best actor, not best supporting actor. Because this
Mhm.
movie is really about the two of them.
Right.
I would say the second half to the last 2/3 of the movie, his character recedes, because intentionally, because Donald Trump is sort of ascending. So as Donald Trump ascends, Roy Cohn kind of descends, and so you see less of Jeremy Strong on camera in the on probably the last half of the movie. But he, like, to me, he stole the show. And again, I don't know enough about Roy Cohn to know if this was a caricature. I didn't feel like Sebastian Stan was playing Trump like a character. It didn't feel like an SNL skit, which I think it easily could have become. To me, they felt like authentic characters, even though Roy Cohn was like off the charts. Like, this man is insane.
Mhm.
And he's mentoring Donald Trump, and that's how we see Donald Trump become the man he is. So, anyways, I thought the acting was very riveting. Another interesting casting that I thought, Maria Bakalova, who was in Borat 2. And
Mhm.
if people remember, Borat 2 was one of my favorite movies of that year it came out. You can come for me, but whatever. She plays Ivana Trump, so Trump's first wife, and they have a very interesting dynamic, and I guess they had a pretty interesting dynamic in real life, and I thought she did a fabulous job as well. And then there's like some other characters, but I would say like the three main characters are Donald Trump, Roy Cohn, and Ivana Trump, and I thought the acting, all three of them held their own, very good, very riveting. And I would be really surprised if we don't see best actor or best supporting actor nominations for these roles. Other things that I loved about the movie, it takes place in the 70s, and so it and 80s, and it was hyper stylized. Like, it looked like I was watching something from the 70s or 80s. The camera shots, the cinematography, it was grainy, like chef's kiss. This is exactly what I want when it's a biopic about the 70s and 80s. They really leaned into the aesthetic, and like I said, it felt like the actual filmmaking itself felt like something from the 70s and 80s. It was great. I love historical things about the city of New York in the 70s and 80s, because for anyone who knows anything about New York, it was a complete for a lack of a better term, dump in the 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
It was ultra violent, ultra in poverty. It's just such an interesting socioeconomic history and a cultural history of a city in decay in the 70s and 80s. So again, we see this city decaying while Trump is ascending, and his whole shtick is that he's going to make New York great again. And we see that, parallels to his presidency. And so yeah, stylistically amazing. The technical filming I loved. The acting I thought was phenomenal. So for all those reasons, and the story was super super riveting. I thought the script was very well written. I have very few problems, if at all any problems, with this movie. I thought
Wow.
it was insanely watchable. It was 2 hours. I think with a biopic, it's always hard, especially when it's over the course of time. Like, we're watching this develop over 2 decades. Sometimes biopics can kind of feel like before and afters, if
Yes.
you know what
Yeah.
I mean. Like, kind of like part one, part two. It maybe had a little bit of that, but like, I don't know. This is one of those cases, Mike, where I don't know what I would have changed to make it better. I think it's just kind of those are the pains of a biographical film. That, like, there's always going to be kind of a transition piece in the story, the narrative, and maybe it could have been tweaked in writing and editing. I'm not sure, but overall, again, I thought this movie was fantastic. I do want to say the language is very colorful. You can imagine
I could imagine.
what we
Yeah.
know about Trump now. But it's really Roy Cohn's character, Jeremy Strong's character, Roy Cohn, that like this, like, his language is absolutely horrendous. So for people who are, language might be hard for them to hear, like, he uses a lot of slurs, he uses a lot of swear words, like he's really brutal and ruthless in his language. So that's one thing I want to warn people about. And the other thing I want to warn people about is that there is some explicit scenes, and there's one tough scene in particular between Trump and Ivana, which I found very difficult to watch. It wasn't so much graphic as just like, it was a tough watch. So that's just my disclaimer. But again, I think if you know anything about Trump, um it would have been weird not to have those things in the movies. Does that make sense, Mike? Like,
Yeah.
it's to understand where he is now, you kind of have to look back and you know, he wasn't always upstanding. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
I think that that's something you can't avoid, like,
no,
regardless of what side of like the political discussion you're on. If you're telling a biopic, you're going to see both the positives and the negatives. Like, that's even the biopic on talking about Dick Cheney and all the things that he did. Like, they were surprisingly balanced, of this idea of like, well, here's some of the good and here's some of the bad, and you make your own decision. It sounds like this movie kind of does that as well. Is it right that it's not necessarily picking a side? It's just showing you
I
what
think
happened to this person, or
like, again, I don't know enough about Trump. I don't know enough about his upbringing to know how accurate things are. What you
right,
learn
right,
about him immediately is that he's super, super, super ambitious. He is obsessed with wealth, and he's
right,
obsessed with power, and he wants to get out of his dad's shadow. That's kind of
right,
like, that's the Trump we're introduced to. And so, um some people may equate those characteristics negatively, while others would say those are good things, to be ambitious and driven and whatever, right? So like, you kind of start off with a I guess a neutral, depending on what your political leanings are, cuz like, if you are all about like wealth distribution, his love of money probably is going to irk you from the beginning, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but it's kind of a neutral portrayal. But then and there are moments like, and I even, as I was watching this movie, I'm like, he's sympathetic in the beginning, right?
right,
Like,
right,
and there's almost this like naive sense about him that you're like, oh, Donald, like,
right, right.
Donnie, like, and you kind of see how progressively his morality gets compromised by
Oh,
this
I
Roy
see.
Cohn. And
Yeah,
so, and again, like, he's his mentor. And so you just see kind of like Roy just continues to like move the goalpost in a sense of like what's decent. Um, and so in that sense, quickly, like, he become like the villain of the story. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
Donald Trump is like the villain of this
You
story.
see, yeah, you see that progression, though, is what you're
Yes.
saying. Like, you're
Yeah, there
seeing a
is a
variety of sides of it.
there's definitely a progression. He definitely in this movie contains traits that e easily could go to the negative, if you know what I mean, and, like,
Hmm.
in this movie, they do, right? But, like,
Well,
with a different mentor, he could have been a completely different
yeah,
person, right?
yeah,
So, that's, I think the dynamic between the 2 of them is so fascinating, and I would love to read a biography, about Roy Cohn, and I would love to read, like, a true biography of Donald Trump, because I definitely wouldn't trust anything that he puts out, and I wouldn't trust
yeah,
anything that Roy Cohn put out either. So this is the type of movie where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to learn so much more about them. Like, I want to read a biography about their relationship. Like, it's just so fascinating. I thought it was completely well done, and it's definitely a see it for me. But with the caveat being, of course, like, there are going to be some extreme language and some explicit scenes, and I know that's not
yeah,
for everyone.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
phenomenal,
Fair enough.
phenomenal movie.
The movie I'm going to review this week, Carry On,
Less
is
phenomenal.
well. I mean, it had its. We'll see. I mean, it had its moments. Certainly less pressing to the history of the United States or anyone that's part of it. I mean, it takes place in the U.S. It takes place at an airport. I think one of the main airports in New York, though that's not, again, it's not really important where it's set. But yeah, it's Christmas Eve and people are traveling. And basically, Taron Egerton, he plays someone who works for the Department of Transportation, and he works at the airport during a very, very busy, like the busiest travel day of the year. And a mysterious traveler is able to get in contact with him and blackmails him
Hmm.
to let a. All he says is, "My friend is going to come through your security check. Let him through." don't stop or we're going to do this thing that we're going to do. And it becomes basically um, a kind of game of cat and mouse between Jason Bateman's character, who is this traveler, and Taron Egerton, who is this, worker, just blue collar, regular kind of worker, and then having to try to outwit this guy,
Sorry, is
and then
Jason
trying to.
Bateman the villain? Is he
He's the villain.
the
He's the
oh
mysterious traveler. We don't really know
the
much about him.
antagonist?
That's right, and we don't really learn too much about him. Again, it's not really the point of the movie. The idea is there's this bag that has something in it. We don't know what it is. Could be and probably is dangerous. And can our main character, I think his name's Ethan, can he figure out a way to warn the police or security or someone when people he cares about, their lives are on the line. So it kind of starts off. Jason Bateman's sort of they have a poetic way of saying it, but basically he tells him, like, will you trade one bag for one life kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, you're going to let this bag through, but I'm not going to kill this person if you do this. And then you'll never see us again. You'll never hear from us again, and we'll continue on our way.
And I assume he's like threatening his family.
That's right. Yeah, he's got
Okay.
a wife who is just recently pregnant. They both work at this airport, just in different sort of departments. So it kind of, again, becomes this, don't tell anyone what we're doing. He's being spoken to through this earpiece that gets sort of sent to him. And it's basically Jason Bateman and Taron Egerton kind of trying to outwit each other throughout this entire movie. This film's really interesting because the parts where they're in the airport and these two characters are talking to each other and they're building tension, and Taron Egerton, his character, tries different things but fails to kind of get out of the situation. That's when the movie is at its best and doing well, and the rise of tension is really, really well done. Then this movie takes breaks to go to a police station where this investigator, she's like also following the trail of something going on, but they don't know what. But something within, how sometimes it happens where they get a tip or they have like some kind of idea that something's happening, but they're trying to put the pieces together. Those scenes were okay, but there were two action sequences that happen that were really, really bad, like really like laughably just so here you have what I would describe as a serious movie where two pretty good actors are in a serious situation,
Head to head.
head to head. Even like, so the guy's fiance, I think Nora, is I can't remember her name. So also somewhat of a recognizable actor. She's very good. All the like TSA workers are all really, really good. Like everyone is really good. They're doing a great job. No one's hamming it up. It's like super serious. And then you get to this detective, and there's this action sequence that takes place in a car that is so low budget and out of place and weird, and I don't get why they did it. Like I get eventually it all connects, and I understand why you've had this character this whole time and how everything connects, and they do a good job there. But it just felt out of place
I think
and
it
weird
was
and like a different movie.
I think it was a huge mistake to take the action out of the airport.
I
All
would have
the
never done that. Never taken it out of the airport. Yeah.
It's kind of like what do they call that? Like a closed door mystery, right? Like
Yeah.
where someone dies but the door is locked, so the murderer has to be in the house. So I think huge mistake. Like that's why those Die Hard and stuff, why those movies are so compelling, because it's a race against the clock and you're stuck in this one building. That's what creates tension. It totally
Yeah.
breaks the tension to leave the
Yeah.
airport.
And I think it would have been, you could have still introduced this character by, her showing up at the airport and then interweaving this person that becomes important. Like you could have found another way around it. But I definitely agree with you. I felt like it tore us out of this tension building, and then you almost had to reset. now you come back. It's like coming back from a commercial break. You had to kind of reset the action and remind us of where we are and what the stakes are. So yeah, I felt like the movie just missed on being a really good, fun thriller action movie, but leading too heavy into these action moments that I don't think added anything. So I'm going to give this movie a stream it, because I still think that the performances in everyone at the actual airport was really good. And the building of tension within that story was good. And the moments that made sense to finally have, like, because not too long into it, we get some one-on-one time between Jason Bateman and Taron Egerton, and they're both really good. Like, it works, and everything they did works, and they make everything makes sense. And this idea of just two people trying to outwit each other. And then, of course, the problems that happen, because nothing ever goes right? Like, even once the bag gets checked in, which, happens within maybe 45 minutes or so, then there's the whole next part, which just things keep going wrong, and he keeps digging himself into a bigger and bigger hole because he's trying to save people. And it's not just about his wife, it's about all these people he works with and all these people at the airport. And then you find out what's in the case and all these things. Like, there's all this great building that blocks that kind of add to it. But again, there's just so many little things where it's just like, that's not where your budget was. You ran out of money here. And even the ending of the movie feels a little tacked on. And yeah, I felt like it was good, but not necessarily great. So I'm gonna give Carry On a stream it. That'll do it for us this week. We'll have another new episode next week leading up to Christmas, and then Taylor, as you mentioned, we're wrapping up the year. So we'll probably do some wrap-up shows to close out the year. And of course, we want to give a reminder to please watch and read Conclave, which is our next book in Movie Club.
Or do what I did and listen.
Listen. The audiobook was very good.
Yes.
So maybe people can listen to the audiobook. Again, our movie club will be in January. We'll continue to tease it over the next couple of weeks and then finalize the exact end date. But early January, please have your fan questions emailed in or anything you want to contribute. But we'll have Katie back on the show, and we'll do a book and movie club, which is a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody, for listening this week, and we'll be back next week.
Go see some movies.
Thank you for listening to You Had Me at Skip It, a Soul One Arts Inc. podcast. This podcast is produced by Mike Shepard and Austin Spinner Summer. It is a project of Soul One Arts Inc. To learn more about Soul One and all the great work that Soul One is doing in the arts community, especially in film, theater, and other performing arts, visit soul1arts.ca. You can contribute to this podcast by visiting soul1arts.ca and going to the podcast tab. You'll find all the information on You Have Me at Skip It and how you can get your questions read on air each week. Thank you again for listening.